Well, joining us now is Dave Stubbs, veteran sports columnist in Montreal. And you've been speaking to some of Dryden's teammates and friends this weekend. What have they been saying about his passing?
Well, Ian, to begin with, I think most of his teammates and friends here in the city they're in shock. No one had any sense that Ken was in ill health at all. Spent some time with him in this past February at the Four Nations Face-Off in Montreal, and he was around and about, and he was vital. He was working on a feature story that he was going to write for a magazine about a couple days later. So no one really knew that Ken was ill, and he probably took his exit from this world very much as he lived his life, and that is gracefully and quietly and with a little bit of privacy. It was a very, very hard time in Montreal now, and we're all still trying to catch our breath from his passing.
Yeah, I mean, shocking when I heard the news on Friday night in British Columbia, but I also thought, as you kind of suggest, sort of appropriate that a guy who, as great as he was, kind of enjoyed a low-key life, and so his passing would take us all by surprise. What stood out to you so far as you've talked to, for example, some of his former teammates?
Well, I talked to Larry Robinson yesterday, who was one of the big three on defense, with Serge Savard and Guy Lapointe. And Larry had a really interesting point. He said, we all just kind of took Ken for granted. The Canadiens were renowned in the 1970s for the firepower, for the offense that they had, the way they could fill a net. But they always had Ken Dryden back there. And Larry said at some point we'd start a game and we'd say, okay, we'll just start the game and Kenny will be back there. And then maybe in the end of the second period, the Canadiens were down by 1 or 2. And they said, okay, guys, let's put it in gear and let's go get this done. And they always knew that Dryden was back there, and way more often than not, he was going to make the big save, he was going to smother the rebound, and he was going to give the Canadiens a chance to win. Yvan Cournoyer spoke to that yesterday. He said when we had Ken Dryden in goal, we always knew that he was going to give us a shot to win the game.
You spent 50 years covering sports. You have seen hundreds probably of athletes, interviewed them, and I know your timing is kind of just at the tail end of the Dryden era, but was he different? Like, did he stand out to you as being different? Oh, absolutely. Goaltenders, by their nature, are sort of famous for their quirks, for the idiosyncrasies, for the fact that maybe a little bit off center. Ken was every bit of that, but he, in a very good way. I mean, here's a guy who was bringing law books into the dressing room, where other guys were bringing the Montreal Canadiens, the Forum program, into the room. Ken just had a different view of the game. From the very outset, we all understood that he was just seeing hockey in a different way. And if anyone has not seen or not read his 1983 landmark book, The Game, you have to do that, because you will see how Ken Dryden, just putting together scraps of paper that he harvested in a shoebox, assembled one of the all-time great sports books, certainly the best hockey book that's ever been written. So he just saw the game through different eyes. He was analytical, and he was able to distill the game. He was able to synthesize a lot of what was going on and just make it understandable to the average fan. And he showed us a game that we never really saw watching the same hockey game. Yeah, and proof of that, of his thoughtfulness about hockey, is that when this country perceived that there was a hockey crisis after the NHL players lost in Nagano in the Olympics, there was this open ice summit in 1999, and people turned to him to kind of guide us through that. And so what is it that you think he brought to his analysis of hockey that would put him in a position like that? Well, Ken's analytical mind was very different. Obviously, being a law student, he had a discipline that he developed through law school. He just had a different sense of seeing it. And a lot of us in the past have tried to figure out what that was. We've asked Ken himself, and he said, I relate the game the way I see it. And that was always one of the very special things about him, is that no matter what we thought we had seen in the game, Ken would see something a little different. So while we were all looking to the left, Ken was looking to the right, and he was actually showing us a different side of the game of hockey and getting underneath what motivated an athlete, made them tick. And being one of the great ones himself, he was able to do it. The beauty, too, of being a goaltender is all the action was happening in front of him. And so like a catcher in baseball, with everything happening in front of you, you have a very different look. And you're playing 60 minutes, you're not sitting on the bench. So you're seeing what's going on, and you can put all of this into perspective, and no one did it better than Ken. Just 30 seconds left, Dave. What do you hope the legacy of Ken Dryden will be?
Well, I think that we will all understand that Ken was much more than a hockey player. A 200 by 85-foot NHL rink was not going to contain what this man was all about. He very much took his life from the game of hockey, used it as a springboard into many things. As an educator, an author, a television producer, he did everything beyond the game. So that, I think, is going to be his greatest legacy, the fact that he did a lot more and he touched a lot more lives than just those of average hockey fans.
He sure did. A great man and a great sadness across this country with his passing, Dave. Thank you very much for speaking with us tonight.
Thanks for having me, Ian.